So with us now, Alison Singer, the founder and president of the Autism Science Foundation. Thanks so much for being with us. So again, let me just focus on that question there. He says there'll be announcements. When you hear him say that, what's your first question?
I think all of us who have family members whom we love who have autism appreciate that RFK and the administration is focused on autism. And I agree with RFK that we do need gold standard science in autism. But this announcement is unlikely to be gold standard science. I mean, autism is very complicated. There's not a single cause of autism. It's a complex mix of genetics and the environment. So this idea that someone can announce the cause of autism is a gross oversimplification.
When you say it's unlikely, what raises that question specifically? Because he started talking about this in the spring, suggesting there would be studies. I mean, have those studies launched? Are there results from them?
We have not seen any studies that were launched. There was an announcement that there would be an autism data science initiative, and applications have been submitted. Many of those applications are focused on answering questions that would be important for us to know to move the science forward. What we're concerned about is that those funds will be diverted to further studies looking at vaccines as a cause of autism when we have 20 years of studies, a mountain of science showing that there is no relationship between autism and vaccines.
If you'd like to just emphasize that point one more time, because it is something that Secretary Kennedy either says directly or says with coded language or has regularly over the years.
Yeah, he has talked about his belief that vaccines cause autism for years. And so we think that this announcement of the cause will probably have something to do with vaccines, either that vaccines themselves cause autism or that, given his focus on the CDC over the last few weeks, that they've uncovered some conspiracy at the CDC. They found new data that warrants reinvestigation of whether vaccines cause autism. And this is problematic really for two reasons. First, it scares parents. You know, not all parents, especially new parents, are familiar with the huge body of evidence exonerating vaccines as a cause of autism. They will hear that the government is investigating whether vaccines cause autism, and they may say, oh, well, I'll wait until we have that information. I'll wait to vaccinate my child. And we know that when you withhold vaccination, you're doing absolutely nothing to prevent your child from being diagnosed with autism, but you're absolutely leaving your child vulnerable to a disease that could kill them. And our second concern, as I said, is that we're worried that critically needed autism funds will be diverted from studies that could actually shed light on the real causes of autism. Those will be diverted to further studies of whether or not vaccines cause autism. And, you know, there's not a bottomless pit of money at the NIH to study autism. We need to use our scarce resources wisely, and we need to make every dollar count.
Again, and we're looking at live pictures right now from the hearing room where we will hear from Secretary Kennedy shortly, and we'll also hear, frankly, the questions that senators have for him shortly to see if they're focused in on many of these key issues. Some of the language, again, that Secretary Kennedy uses, I feel like people who are novices to the subject, and I count myself among them, we don't necessarily know what he's talking about, but we played that soundbite, and you heard it before, of him saying that it will focus on interventions and maybe interventions being responsible in some way for autism. What is he talking about there?
We're not certain what he means by interventions. He talks as if he's really the first person to think, oh, we should study whether, what are the causes of autism, when in fact, very smart scientists all over the world have been studying this question for years, and we've learned a lot about the underlying biology of autism. We've learned that autism is highly heritable, that if you have one child with autism and you have another child, that child is 15 times more likely than someone in the general population to be diagnosed. And we know that that risk extends to nieces and nephews. We can identify the genetic cause of autism in about 20% of cases of profound autism, and we're now moving towards correcting those genes using gene editing technologies to help restore the function of those genes. And we've also identified some environmental factors that cause risk for autism. Waiting to have a baby. We know that older parents, older mothers, and particularly older fathers that increases risk of having a child with autism. And we also know that fever during pregnancy, certain illnesses during pregnancy, certain medications taken during pregnancy, those also confer risk. So the goal is really to focus our limited resources on finding the true causes of autism. That is what our families want and deserve.
Alison Singer, I got to say, I love the way you discuss this because there are so many questions and there are responsible ways to address it. And I know you care about that so deeply. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Very helpful. Thank you so much. And we are